The discovery of the Cairo Geniza in the 19th century uncovered over 400,000 Jewish manuscript fragments, some of which were over 1,000 years old. In addition to many religious texts, the collection also included many cultural, economic, and personal documents. One gem in particular is a letter from Maimonides, the 12th century rabbi, scholar, and physician, one of Jewish history's most preeminent halachists and philosophers, describing a personal tragedy, the death of his beloved brother David, a merchant at sea. Here is an excerpt from that letter. "The greatest misfortune that has befallen me during my entire life, worse than anything else, was the demise of the saint, may his memory be a blessing, who drowned in the Indian Sea, carrying much money belonging to me, to him, and to others, and left with me a little daughter and a widow. On the day I received that terrible news, I fell ill and remained in bed for about a year, suffering from soreness, fever, and depression, and was almost given up. About 8 years have passed, but I am still mourning and unable to accept consolation. And how should I console myself? He grew up on my knees, he was my brother, and he was my student." We read in Parashat Shemini this week of another tragic and unexpected loss. Now Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, each took his fire pan, put fire in it, and laid incense on it. And they offered before the Lord alien fire, which he had not enjoined upon them. And fire came forth from the Lord and consumed them. Thus they died at the instance of the Lord. Then Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord meant when he said, 'Through those near to me I show myself holy and gain glory before all the people.' Vayidom Aharon." And Aaron was silent. Aaron responds to tragedy with silence. Perhaps Aaron's silence was the right choice. There were no words to do justice to such a tragedy, and maybe Aaron knew that any words he might be able to conjure would be words steeped in pain and anger, directed at Moses or at God. So instead he chose silence. Silence in this instance might have actually been a sign of maturity for Aaron, who had in the past gotten himself into more trouble by opening his mouth. The Talmud in Megillah offers the wisdom that one should always be careful in formulating a response, as sometimes an explanation is worse than the original action. The Talmud then cites as an example for this the sin of the golden calf. When Aaron is explaining to his brother how the sin came to be in Moses' brief absence, Aaron places blame on the sinful people and says about the gold he collected to make an idol, "Va'ashlichehu va'esh vayitzeh ha'egel hazeh." I hurled it into the fire, and out came this calf. Aaron, instead of taking some ownership for the sin, speaks in a voice of utter passivity, which inadvertently makes the situation worse. The calf just emerged from the fire? The forfeiture of responsibility in his formulation makes it sound as if the calf does have some divine quality. Here his words do more damage than good. Having just suddenly lost his two sons, surely Aaron's pain was immense. We can offer countless interpretations of what his silence means, as many of the commentators do. But in the end, we will never know exactly what he felt in that moment or in the many moments after. Our scripture lacks any account of insight into Aaron's emotional state, nor do we get to hear a proper eulogy for Nadav and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu's deaths are only addressed in the narrative's continuation in relation to how it will impact the upcoming rituals to be performed by their father and brothers. This coming Tuesday is Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. Although this year we will not have any public gatherings to commemorate the day, there are still many online opportunities to do so offered from the Sydney Jewish community. And there is also tremendous value in just reading the stories or watching interviews with survivors online. Remembrance is about hearing and affirming the tragedies that befell our fellow Jews, about keeping history alive, and learning from that history to ensure it cannot repeat itself. But there's also another purpose. I think about the blessing of that document found in the Cairo Geniza. I personally am deeply struck by Maimonides' words. Every rabbi has studied excerpts from his legal and philosophic works before, but how often have we had the opportunity to truly encounter the man, to see his full humanity, and hear a first-hand account of his inner turmoil? Hearing records of tragedy that impacted our ancestors, both distant and not so distant, affords us the opportunity for a deeper and more complete encounter. I hope that we all find opportunities this Yom HaShoah and always to not just learn from the past, but to encounter it. I also pray that this Shabbat, when we read the story of Aaron and his sons, we can practice finding empathy, seeing the humanity of, and connecting with our ancestors, even when they themselves couldn't find the right words or didn't have the opportunity to share them. Shabbat Shalom.